Every boy wants his father in his life.
Chris Graebe's parents divorced when he was 5. He moved with his mother from their Texas home to Indiana.
It was hard not to be around both parents at the same time, it's adjustment. But so growing up, my parents got married to new people.
Chris's new stepfather was abusive. Church became he and his mother's refuge.
And so my understanding of Jesus was way off as a kid growing up. Just the way it was presented to me was a turn or burn kind of thing, like give your life to Christ or you're gonna go burn in hell forever.
Chris found a positive outlet in athletics.
I try to keep my nose clean so that I could excel in sports and do that. But once high school was over, I came to college and I didn't have sports anymore.
Chris immediately joined a fraternity at Indiana University.
Just started off with me having a few drinks. Then the drinking, I started becoming heavily, and that wasn't making me happy anymore. And I started doing drugs, illegal drugs, and prescription pills, things like that. And and it all kind of morphs into the next thing. Well, this isn't making me happy, so maybe I'll try this. And then I found myself in numerous relationships, searching for something to fill a hole in my life.
In his junior year of school, Chris's aunt offered him a job in California and a place to live. 2 weeks later, Chris dropped out of school and headed west.
I figured maybe if I go to California, I can get into entertainment, and maybe that will be the thing that fills that void, that hole in my life.
Chris auditioned and was cast in an MTV reality show. A few months later, the program was canceled. When
I got that call, it definitely shook me some more, because I was just like, man, I thought this was gonna be the thing, so now what? So now I'm a college dropout. The show didn't get worked out. I'm like, I have nowhere to go.
Chris's long-lost dad heard about his son's situation and for the first time reached out to help.
Like my dad calls me and he says, I got a job for you in Nashville. So I packed up my Jeep and I drove down to Nashville and moved in with my dad for the first time since I was 5.
Chris worked at a local restaurant where he partied with all the employees after hours. All except one, a woman named Verna.
And she just began a friendship with me and would encourage me and be like, hey, Chris, there's something better for you.
Verna invited Chris to church, and eventually he agreed to go.
And I just sat there and just listened, and the room was full of college students. It was full of people, 20-something, 19, 25. It was totally real. These people weren't faking it. They weren't putting on a show. It was like they were praising and shouting to God because of how He changed their lives. And so there was definitely a natural draw to say, I want this. I want this.
Several weeks later, Chris went back to church after a weekend of partying.
I began talking to God. The first real conversation I'd had with Him, probably my whole life. You're real. And Jesus, I know what you did for me. I realize it now. And I'm sorry, and will you forgive me? And will you be my Lord? And will you take my life? And will you lead my life? And so I was there on a corner, downtown Nashville, by myself. Wasn't down front of some church. It wasn't, like with a group of people. It was just me and God. And we began a relationship then.
Chris says God provided opportunities for him to live out his dream. MTV producers recast him in the new Road Rule series. You may also recognize Chris from Battle of the Sexes, too.
I got to share Christ in different ways with different people. All of my cast members and I sit down at different times while I was reading the Bible, and they'd come and talk to me. They'd ask me different questions, they'd say, what are you reading the Bible today?
Chris met his future wife at church.
I met him like that month that he got saved. So I only saw this passionate, on fire Chris. And I only heard stories of the previous life. So I think that made it a whole lot easier for me to go, okay, this is who he is now, and God has forgiven all of that. God orchestrated our story, not only our love story, but our life story.
Less than a year later, the two were married. Chris now has a chance to be the father he always longed for. His son Caden is 2, and a second child is on the way.
He's new every day to me. So more and more I'm understanding the gracious side of God and the love and the compassion and the mercy He has for me. And and learning more and more what it means to trust him as my provider and trust him as the one who's going to open and shut the doors. But he's my dad, you know? He's my father.